Welcome everyone to 222. We made it over the border into Queensland, into 222 Offshore here. It's pretty crazy what these boats can do. There are things that we were hitting at 120 mile an hour that I thought were going to break the boat in half, and they're only little tiny waves compared to what we're racing a lot of the time. So it's pretty cool what these guys have done here. An amazing workshop that they've opened up to us, same as our place. Really respect the floors. You can see they've gone to a huge amount of effort here really with their preparation of the facility. So we'll get the cars out of the truck. We've got a fair bit of work to do here with repairs and engine work and bits and pieces, but huge thanks to Matty and the 222 Offshore team for having us. It's a perfect facility for us, and can't thank you enough. Huge thanks to 222 Offshore for opening up their facility and letting us take the place over basically. It has pretty much everything we need. We've learnt to adapt to not going back to the race team to our own place in between rounds, and we're managing okay. We've had just one pallet of parts sent up to keep us mobile, but you can see there's a heap going on here. The usual stuff after a race meeting. The cars get a fair pounding around the bodywork, especially the rear when they're racing quite hard. So you can see Stretch here has got all of the spare parts that have just been trimmed. So we had quite a few of those parts straight out of our composite shop back in Melbourne, but they were completely untrimmed. So Stretch has been out the back on the grinder for 2 days straight now, and we're at the point where those parts are ready to get stickered up and go back on the car. We've got an engine out. You can see here we've got one that's ready to head down to the dyno, which we've been able to secure some time up here in Queensland on the dyno to get the engines mapped and have at least 2 spares in the truck to carry us around for as long as we're going to be on the road racing. We'd normally come back and do all of that stuff at work, and it's quite easy, but we're still managing quite well and improvising while we're on the road. So you can see Andre's car here is still pretty much intact. So the plan while we're away is to really put a huge effort into our pit stops and do as much practice as possible, which means this car, or at least one car, has to be intact. So that car is that at the moment. So hopefully by tonight we'll have an engine back and ready to go into Rick's car, have that one finished off, and then get stuck into tearing Andre's car down. Rick's car can be the pit stop car, and we can chuck all the crew on Andre's. A few days time we should have all of this stuff packed up and back into the truck to our next adventure. As I mentioned earlier, a few years back I had the privilege of racing for these guys, which is how we initially all met and have become really great friends since. So this is the boat. I've got a few photos of that around the house at home and have a real soft spot for this. It's an amazing piece of machinery. It's 40 foot long. It comes in at around 4.5 tons, and you would be amazed what you can hit in this boat at over 120, 130 mile an hour, and it just takes an absolute pounding and keeps trucking along. So come and have a quick look. You can see the sheer size of it when you get up close to it. It's not the kind of thing that you'd rock up to your local boat ramp and try and put in. Normally they have a full-size crane set up, so the boat comes up on its side for transport, obviously because of the width. When it gets to the event, it comes down flat like this. The crane picks the boat up and lifts it straight into the water and then back on the trailer. you may be able to see about halfway down the hull there's a red circle. That is really important because if you have an issue and end up upside down or on your way down to the bottom, that's another escape hatch to get out if you are upside down. And we'll go through a little bit more once we're inside of how much safety is actually built into this boat. When I raced this boat, it actually had 2 big block naturally aspirated engines in it. Since then the guys have put something a little bit more powerful, so it was good for about 125 mile an hour as I raced. It'll probably do over 130 or near 140 with these things in it, so how cool is that? So 2 1075 Mercury big blocks, and the power that these things punch out is pretty impressive, similar to what we use in a ski race boat. Obviously one of these, but this boat's got 2 of them. We'll head up to the cockpit and have a look at what goes on in there. Well, you can see it's got the right oil in it, which is good. So the cockpit, in relation to the whole size of this hull, is quite small. That's for safety reasons. You want this as small and as strong as you can possibly get it. It's almost F18 spec fittings and everything to get it as strong as what it actually is. Everything's really thick and heavy and solid. So this is actually the throttle side that I'm jumping in now, which I didn't get to sit in when we raced it, and the driver sits on the right. So tempting just to hit those start buttons and bark the engines up, but they've put this into hibernation now, so all the belts are off and everything's been CRC'd up or lubed up to last the off season. So you can see the throttle guy has his throttles here, all of the engine information and the trim. So he's actually quite busy managing all of those things. My job was just to basically steer it, which was easy for me. So on that side you have just one Motec dash, and fans and bits and pieces, but nothing too strenuous to deal with. You just need to focus on staying away from other boats. You can see the visibility in here is very limited, and the amount of spray and roost that comes off the boats is significant. So even though you can't see much now in the workshop, you see a lot less than that when you're actually racing, especially in the field, because a lot of the time that's covered with water. And to keep an eye on the boats around you and behind you and beside you, you've only just got these tiny little mirrors here on the side. So you really need to put a lot of effort into your situational awareness to not bump into people. The one thing that I had to learn quite quickly that I'd always had a bit of a phobia about was breathing underwater and learning how to do scuba stuff. So I had to go and get my license on that. You can see there's a set of goggles in here, and we've also got regs down by our side. So when you jump in and put all your seat belts on, the last thing you do before you drive out onto the course is get that reg and tuck it all up under your seat belt and make sure everything's turned on. So if you do go over and end up in the water, the first thing that you do is whack that in your mouth so that you're safe and you can breathe inside here as long as you need to in order to make a calm exit with whichever way the boat may be facing and whether it's actually full of water or not. So this is such a cool thing. One thing that I'd love to do again one day if the opportunity comes up after all of the viruses and things finish and this kind of motorsport can kick off again. We actually makes you realise how lucky you are talking to this crew who are parked up at the moment, that we're still able to go and race, which is hard being away from home, but also, you know, you're really lucky to actually be out on the road and doing what we love. So really cool experience, and I'm glad I finally got to show you guys inside this boat.